Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. This week, my main goal for my reading is going to be to start Rhythm of War. So, I bought Rhythm of War just after it came out. I had at the time read Oathbringer, so I should have been able to go straight into this. However, when I picked it up, I don't even think I started reading it. I think I just straight away thought, I'm not ready. I don't remember a lot of the things that have happened in the Stormlight Archives. I haven't really picked up all the connections between the Stormlight Archives and all the other books. I didn't feel ready. So I went back and did a whole Cosmere reread, and now I'm finally ready to read Rhythm of War. I'm so excited for it, but also kind of scared that it's not going to live up to my expectations. But it will be good not to have to avoid spoilers for this book after I've read this. And then once I've read this, I'm also, not this week, obviously, going to read The Lost Metal, and then I'll be ready for Wind and Truth, which is coming out in December. So like my whole Cosmere reread has kind of come together just in time for that new release. And I really hope that I will like this. I will actually be reading this on my Kobo, even though I have this beautiful edition with the lovely end pages. I'll probably keep this out just to look whenever there's pictures. Am I going to spoil myself by looking at this picture? No, because I don't really know what that's about. Anyway, I don't know really how much I'm going to be able to talk about this as I read it because it's the fourth book in an epic fantasy series, but I will try to give you some thoughts without spoiling things. As well, I'm going to be reading some audiobooks, very unrelated. Firstly, I am halfway through 17 Years Later by J.P. Pomare. So this is a thriller by a New Zealand author that lives in Australia now. It's about this family in kind of a remotish small town New Zealand, and they're very rich. They hire this Maori guy as a chef, and then he ends up being arrested because they were all stabbed to death. And we're kind of following his telling of what happened, as well as kind of in more modern times after he's been in jail for 17 years, there's like a podcaster trying to investigate what really happened. So I'm really enjoying that, and I'm super engaged in the mystery, and I'm hoping that it surprises me and keeps me engaged like right up to the end. Based on everything I've read by J.P. Pomare before, I expect that will be the case. So I'm going to read that. I don't think that will take me, like, this will probably be a week and a half vlog, so I don't think that will take me that long. Once I've finished that, I'm going to try and pick up the next books in the Innkeeper Chronicles by Ilona Andrews. So I'm up to book 4, I think. But I'll talk more about that when we get to it. I think for this vlog, my goal for Rhythm of War is probably just going to be to get halfway through. I think my Kobo is guesstimating that I will read this in 32 hours. Often, my Kobo starts out very optimistic about my reading speed, so I suspect it might be a little bit more, but I have kind of put aside 3 weeks to read Rhythm of War, so I guess let's see if I can get halfway through in a week and a half.
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you.
Hello, so it is a running day, and I have been running. I'm not running now, but I have been listening to 17 Years Later, and I am loving it. There's just so many different pieces together, and I keep changing my mind about who's responsible and what's going on, and just like every little piece gives me a new theory. It's just so satisfying to read or to listen to. There is now a helicopter or something. Oh, a plane flying over the top of me. As always, impossible to find a quiet place outside to film. But anyway, the summary is that I'm loving 17 Years Later. The other thing, last night I only read the prologue. Uh-oh, there's someone coming the other way on the path. Am I brave enough to keep going? Quickly, the prologue. It was about Navani. Like a lot of the other Stormlight books, we're back to when the king was assassinated many years ago. And Navani is the king's wife, so we're learning a lot more about the king and Navani's relationship with him and like what he was up to. And it was interesting, but it was also a lot of like Navani managing dramas and dealing with issues that didn't really seem that important. Okay, no, I had to stop while I went past that person because I'm too we'll see. Anyway, it was a lot of like Navani dealing with these like very administrative type tasks to do with this party that's going on where the king's assassinated, and her husband always like making promises to people and her having to smooth it over. And it just didn't really have the epicness that I was expecting for it to have. Even though it was also very enlightening, and in terms of the bigger story, I still feel like I got a lot from it, but I thought I would get more from that prologue. But I will try and continue that some more today as well.
Dancing to your beat, wanting to blend in, no self-expression, 'cause I wanted you to see I'm not so different, fitting your system, so why do you tell me I'm wrong when
Okay, so on my run earlier, I did finish 17 Years Later, and I really loved it. I think he did such a great job of having the two different timelines, and in one you have this podcaster who sort of starts out believing that this guy is innocent, or that he could be innocent, and discovering things that maybe seem like maybe he is guilty. And then you also have this psychologist doing an investigation on the other side of the world in the UK, and he's kind of going the other way. He starts out thinking this guy is probably guilty, but is discovering things that make you think maybe he's actually innocent. And so you're kind of going in both directions at the same time. As well, they're kind of both getting themselves into dangerous situations, and he manages to like put it together in such a way that like you learn something from one person's perspective that makes you realize the other person might be in danger, but also they're on other sides of the world, so they can't even really communicate very well with each other. It was really well done, and like the ending was just a little bit thrilling, not too over the top, and I think that's kind of what I like with thrillers. I like it to be more of just a mystery, and then like it crescendos into a little bit of a thrilling feeling so that you can't wait to get to the end. And as well, what this also did really well is every single piece was important, but it wasn't like a lot of thrillers. I feel like when they come together at the end, it's so over the top, and a lot of pieces will have just been introduced to confuse you and end up not being really relevant, or the way that they are relevant is unbelievable. Whereas this, I just feel like all the pieces came together in such a satisfying way, but also like a way that I hadn't really seen coming until right at the end. It's possible that if you read this, you would pick up on the ending, but also I don't think if you did figure it out that you would feel like that took away from the enjoyment of it. So I had a really great time with this. I think the only thing that maybe would stop it from being a favorite for me is that I didn't necessarily feel particularly attached to the characters, but I do still think they were really well written characters, and a lot of the themes it was exploring were really interesting as well, in terms of like racial bias and just flat out racism and like class differences and the justice system in general. Like, that was a really good book. I'm so glad I read it. And as well, I think the audiobook narration was part of what made it as great as it did. So I definitely recommend that. The other thing I have been reading, of course, is Rhythm of War. Wait, I put this one here to hold it up, even though actually I know now as soon as I hold it up, I'm going to be like, oh, too heavy. I'm too weak. Anyway, this, I have got, I think it's telling me I'm 9% of the way through. It is now kind of counting down as I read it on my Kobo, and it's saying 31 hours, which I think has only gone down like an hour from when I started, but now I feel like it's actually going down at the rate that I'm reading it rather than like going up and down and up and down. So 31 hours to go. That's a lot. And so far, to be honest, I'm somewhat underwhelmed. I feel like the ending of Oathbringer was so epic that I kind of was expecting to come back into this at that epic level, which maybe was unrealistic. But a lot of what's happening at the beginning of this feels very like slow paced and kind of mundane. Like, there's a section where like it should be exciting. They're fighting these people who have powers that they don't really understand, and like I feel like it's really underplaying how much these characters' lives are at risk. And like, instead of focusing on that, there's like jokes about his mum being like, oh, what happened to that girl that you're dating? And I don't know, it's just like it's not taking it seriously enough. As well, to be honest, what I am thinking about this, so you know how with Mistborn, is it right here? People always say the premise is, what if the bad guy won? with this, I can't help thinking lately, maybe the premise is, what if the good guys are the bad guys? Because I feel like if you look at a lot of the things they've been learning, I'm not sure if they're doing the right things sometimes. Anyway, let me check. How far am I from the end of part 1? Oh, I think I'm only about halfway through part 1. But halfway through, and like very little has happened. I don't know how I'm going to feel about this book now, but I'll try and like maintain my excitement for being back in this world. The other thing that I did read, or I did start, is another audiobook. So I started Sweep of the Blade by Ilona Andrews. So this is the fourth book in the Innkeeper Chronicles. So this is a world where Earth is basically at this way station in space where, like, because it's at the center of a bit of a transportation hub, a lot of the aliens like to stop at Earth and use it as like a way station. But there's a treaty in place that basically means none of them can try and take ownership of Earth, and Earth is going to be left alone. So whenever any aliens are like passing through, they'll stay at these special inns. And the innkeepers have like magical abilities that allow them to kind of keep the aliens safe, but also keep them secret from humans. Book 4 is kind of a little bit of a sideways step in the plot, where we're following the main character, Dina, who's this innkeeper. We're following her sister, and her sister has a thing for vampires. Vampires in this world being aliens with this big expansive society across space and across different planets. So in the third book, we met her sister, and the beginning of book 4 is basically some of the events from book 3, but told from the sister's perspective. I have got, though, far enough through that now we're kind of somewhere else where the sister is in the middle of vampire society, which she knows a lot about, but she's kind of having to prove that knowledge and like prove her place in this society. And everything about it is classic Ilona Andrews. There's a lot of action that, even though I often don't like action, like I haven't been enjoying the action in this, but I like Ilona Andrews' action. Like somehow they managed to write it in a way that always seems very clever. And the same with the humor. I like the humor of Sweep of the Blade, whereas this humor is annoying me. Anyway, I feel like I always end up comparing Ilona Andrews and Sanderson's humor, and Ilona Andrews always comes out on top for me. So I'm really loving the world building and learning so much more about the world in that. The only thing I'm a bit sad about is I think I'm already halfway through it. So I think actually though, once I finish that, I'll just move on to the next Innkeeper Chronicle book because they're so short. I always end up wanting more. Anyway, I'll try not to update you again until I finish part 1. I'll try and actually finish part 1 without taking too much time.
Dancing to your beat, wanting to blend in, no self-expression, 'cause I wanted you to see.
Okay, so I have finally finished part 1 of Rhythm of War. I want to preface this by saying that I am actually enjoying it. Like, I like the characters, so it's fun spending time with them, but also everything that is happening is so mundane, and I kind of feel like the story is like drowning in world building and characters, and the plot, where is the plot? The plot is not here, and maybe that's fine. Wow, I think I look terrible in this light, probably because I'm red from running. Anyway, whatever, that's not the point. The point is Rhythm of War. I feel like in some ways Brennan's being rushed with his world building or something, because often in the earlier books or in his other books we learn about the world through the characters doing things in it or using the magic, or by them discovering it themselves. Whew. Blogging when you go upstairs is a mistake as well. Anyway, we learn so much usually like while things are happening, whereas this, I feel like a lot of the time the characters are just like stopping what they're doing to tell us a bunch of stuff that they've learned in the year that's happened between books. So then, I don't know, it just almost feels like info dumping, to be honest. And then so much of what's happening with the characters feels very disconnected from the bigger stuff that's happening in the world. Like, I really wouldn't have thought that, a book about like a battle with a dark god, kind of, and like a big war between two people that's kind of life or death and dealing with themes of like colonization and genocide, like all of that. And then the main theme that we're looking at with one character is like almost work-life balance, and it's kind of more than that, but it's also kind of just that. And we had a whole bit with Adeline worrying about what he wanted to wear, and I don't know, it just seems like such a weird balance to me. And I'm sure it is going to get going eventually, and I'm sure by the ending I'll be very absorbed in it, but at the moment I'm like, come on, let's get going, you know? Anyway, the other thing I have been doing is listening to my audiobooks. I did finish off Sweep of the Blade, and I really liked it. I think Ilona Andrews is always so great at taking like kind of those classic supernatural creatures and giving them like an interesting twist. So this one is vampires, and we're learning so much about this vampire culture that they've created. But these vampires, like, I tend to imagine them in my head like Klingons from Star Trek, and it's such an interesting culture, and it's so interesting the way that we kind of have this human woman trying to integrate into society, and there's like an exciting plot. Maybe it's not epic in nature like the Stormlight Archives will be, but it's very exciting, and it manages to like get that balance of characters and plot and action and humor. All of it just comes together so well. Also, I did say that this book is kind of a sidestep from the main story. However, the very last line was one of those lines that makes you go, wait, what? Like, it made me very excited to continue the series. But then I have actually also read the next audiobook in the series. What was it called? Sweep With Me, I think, which turned out to be just kind of like another kind of sidestep novella. In this one, there's like a holiday around the treaty on Earth, and during this time they basically have to accept any guests who request to stay in the inn. Oh, there's people coming, hang on. Okay, they're gone. What was I saying though? Oh, it's a short story. Basically, a bunch of people end up at the inn, and there's some drama, and Dina, the main character, the innkeeper, has to deal with it. Wow, it's really windy here. Maybe I'll go this other way where it'll be less windy, hopefully. So many paths here, I can go a million different ways. I'm mainly just trying to avoid people. So I guess the great thing about the Innkeeper Chronicles setup is that it's almost unlimited in the number of stories you could have, because she can always introduce new alien species based on different supernatural creatures, or like weird, like in this one we had funny chicken aliens that really love philosophy. So it's kind of just a little short story, quite separate from the main plot, but I'm pretty sure the last book we're going to come back to that main plot. We're going to find out what happened to her parents, and I think it's the end of the series, so it should be an epic conclusion. So I'm going to start that now when I run home. I'm at the lake at the moment, and I guess I'll try and continue with Rhythm of War when I get home as well. It is a beautiful day today, but there's supposed to be rain coming, which will hopefully mean I have a lot of time for reading Rhythm of War.
Pick it up from the top, hit restart. So far it's been so hard to live, but lately something in me changed. Let it go, let it be. Don't fight your way back in. Let me go, let me be. It's time that we begin. Welcome to a new life. Dripping in gold, that's nice. Welcome to a new life. Everything feels so right till I opened up my eyes. I thought I was defeated, but all I ever needed was just a little space and time to open up the ceiling, a different kind of healing. I feel alive.
Hello, so I have somewhat rearranged my room. I think when I did my bookshelf organization video, I was very fixed on the idea that my desk should go along here in front of the window. However, suddenly I had the idea from somewhere that I could put it across the wall here. And the bonus of that means that now I can stand in front of the window. That is super bright for you, but there is actually a really nice view out here. And I kind of felt like even though I liked getting the light from the window in my face and being able to look out the window as I sat at my desk, I didn't like that the desk was blocking the window. And now I've started thinking that if I have this here, I could actually put another bookshelf in here. I could squeeze it in. And then even when I put more bookshelves in this wardrobe and maybe down here, overall I could have more bookshelves. Do I like the idea of more bookshelves? I think I do. As well, my other idea is that I'm going to put an armchair down here, and this kind of, like previously I was going to put it over here. I think it's going to work out better, but I'm kind of just living with it for a little while. I mean, I can't do any of these bookshelf purchasing or armchair purchasing until I sell my house, which is now just waiting. So I can't do any of that for now, but for now I'm just going to experiment with having my desk here. I also kind of like that it means my bookshelves are really close to my desk, even though I'm not sure what it means for like filming positions, although this is an okay position, isn't it? The lighting seems okay. Anyway, let me update you on my reading. I haven't read any more of my audiobook, I don't think, but I have been reading Rhythm of War, and I'm nearly at the end of part 2, and I will say the plot has arrived. Things are starting to escalate, and I can now see how maybe he's going to make some of the more mundane things that were happening, how he's going to make them relevant. Will Adeline's clothing choices ever be relevant? Doubtful. But like some of the other stuff that the characters are doing, I can see how it could be relevant. And I'm actually now reading it a little bit faster because I am excited about what's going to happen. Although, as you would have seen from the B-roll, we did go to the beach today, so I'm not sure. I've actually been doing pretty good at like reading 2 hours a day according to like the Kobo time coming down. I've been getting it down 2 hours a day, and that was kind of putting me on track to finish maybe a day after when I wanted to. But I'm not sure if today I'm gonna keep on track with that. And also the rain that I mentioned the other day never showed up, so that hasn't given me any reading time either, although there is more rain promised for the weekend. I'm not sure I trust that it's actually going to happen, and I'm actually enjoying the sunshine, so I'm not mad if it doesn't, and I'm probably not mad if I fall behind on my reading either. But as I said, it is escalating, it is getting more exciting, so that should hopefully help in terms of like keeping my momentum going and making it so that this doesn't take me like months and months to read. So I wanted to update you on my run this morning, but of course it rained on me, so we didn't do that. But I have got, actually I forgot to check, I've gotten further through Sweep of the Heart. Okay, so it's saying I'm about 56% of the way through. I was actually hoping to get further through it this week, but because of the rain, my run this morning was a lot shorter than it should have been, so I didn't get that far through. But I should be able to finish it off early next week, or this week, because it's Monday now. Anyway, what's happened with Sweep of the Heart is it's kind of turned into like an intergalactic bachelor show. The Inn is now hosting this like engagement competition. So this intergalactic supreme ruler guy, super powerful, is running this competition where all these different races get to put forward potential spouses for him. And if you had told me that that was the direction this book was going to go in, I would have said that I was not interested in that at all. But of course it's Ilona Andrews, so I'm actually enjoying it. It probably isn't what I was hoping this book would be, and I'm still hopeful that the end of this book will instead get very epic, and I'm somewhat doubtful now. Like, are we actually going to find out about Dina's parents? I think so, but it hasn't been mentioned at all, so it's all still kind of up in the air. But I haven't seen anything about them writing any more books in this series, so I have to imagine that this actually wraps things up. I guess we'll see. The humour has definitely been a bit silly at times, but also I have been laughing out loud while I've been running around town, probably looking crazy. So I don't know if it's what I expected or what I wanted, but I'm still having a good time with it. As well, Rhythm of War, my Kobo is telling me I'm at 47%. I have just gotten into part 3. And it's definitely getting a lot more exciting. Also, start of part 3, I think like the second chapter, or something. We finally got like a flashback. Most of the books of the Stormlight Archives have like a different character's backstory kind of as the focus of each book. And in this one, we hadn't had any yet, but I had heard it was Venli and Shonai, and finally we've got to their backstory. So I'm looking forward to learning more about them and their people. But going back to kind of like the exciting events at the end of part 2, one thing I will say is some of the scenes involve like people walking into the remains of a battle where a lot of people had died. And I know if another author had written it, I would have been really feeling like grossed out, but like the gruesomeness of like seeing a bunch of dead bodies and having to walk through them, like the dead bodies of people that you know, that should be quite horrific. But the way that Brandon wrote it like didn't really get into the horrificness of that, and I kind of wish that somehow I'd been made to feel that scene a little bit more, or those scenes, because things are really going badly at this point. But still, there's a lot of stuff that's been set up that I'm excited to learn more about. Oh, also, I read the interludes at the end of part 2. So again, in between each part in the Stormlight Archive books, there's normally like a couple of chapters of interludes, which go off and kind of give you a little bit more about what some side characters are doing. And I was a little bit confused about something, and then I realized it's probably a reference to one of the novellas. What is it called? Dusk of the Dawn? No. That's a terrible guess. I'll put it here rather than looking it up, but I think it's a reference to that world. And I think that's the one where Brandon recently announced like another surprise secret project novel that you could get as part of the Words of Radiance Kickstarter. And I think that's going to be written in that same world. So now I'm more excited for that because I can see that it's going to be linking in more to the Stormlight Archives. And I'm definitely glad that I read that novella before I read Rhythm of War. So I'm still really glad that I went back and did that whole Cosmere reread and read all the things that I hadn't read in between things. Because I think if I'd read this when I first bought it, I wouldn't have appreciated it as fully, and I probably would have been rereading it at this time anyway. Anyway, I think that's it for now. I'm probably going to wrap up this vlog and continue Rhythm of War in the next one, as well as Sweep of the Heart, and maybe I'm going to try and finish off the Murderbot series as well, although actually finishing off this and finishing off Murderbot and finishing off Innkeeper Chronicles all in a week is probably overly ambitious, but I think I'm going to try it anyway. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I have talked about in this video, because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments, or let me know if you've been reading anything great lately. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.